Ladies and gentlemen, every successful person you admire, every millionaire, every visionary has one thing in common. They've trained their minds like a muscle, not just a sponge. This isn't about talent. It's not even about intelligence. It's about neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to rewire itself based on how you think, what you do, and where you focus. Most people think that becoming a millionaire starts with external actions. Choosing the right investment, launching a profitable business, or making the perfect career move. But those are just outcomes. The real beginning is internal. It starts with how the mind frames the world. Before money is made, a mindset is built. Millionaire thinking is not about luck or even intelligence. It's about mental framing, the way we perceive, interpret, and respond to everything around us. Your brain is constantly creating internal models of the world, driven by your beliefs, past experiences, and emotional associations. These models shape the way you react to challenges, the risks you take, and the opportunities you allow yourself to see. Most people walk around with mental frames shaped by scarcity. They've internalized limitations from their upbringing, their environment, or society's messages about what's possible. So when an opportunity shows up, they don't even see it, or if they do, they don't believe they're capable or worthy of acting on it. In contrast, the person with a millionaire frame assumes that solutions exist, that setbacks are data, and that every obstacle carries information that can be leveraged. This mental framing isn't just motivational fluff, it's deeply biological. When you encounter a situation, your brain engages in predictive processing. It filters and prioritizes information based on your internal narrative. If your dominant frame is "I'm unlucky," then even good fortune can feel threatening. If your frame is "I always figure it out," then even chaos can be energizing. Millionaire thinkers consciously program their frames to align with growth, possibility, and long-term thinking. And one of the clearest examples of this is how high-level performers interpret failure. In a scarcity-based mind, failure equals personal inadequacy. It's shameful, it's final, but in a millionaire mindset, failure is feedback. It's a necessary step in calibration. It's data to refine the strategy. This difference might sound subtle, but neurologically, it's massive. It determines whether your brain remains engaged or shuts down, whether your dopamine circuits activate in curiosity or collapse in defeat. The frame determines whether you spiral or adapt. Another core piece of the millionaire frame is delayed gratification. While most people are hardwired to chase short-term wins, millionaire minds have trained themselves to zoom out. They are able to override the limbic system's need for immediate pleasure in order to align with a bigger, longer-term reward. This takes active effort, but it's a learned skill, one rooted in prefrontal cortex activation. When you consciously train yourself to ask, how will this decision impact my future self? You're building the architecture of millionaire thinking. Mental framing also affects how you use time and energy. Due date. Average thinkers believe their time is being used well if it's filled. Millionaire thinkers know their time is only well spent if it's moving them closer to the vision, so they're ruthless about attention. They say no to distractions, not out of discipline, but because their frame is different. Time isn't something they spend, it's something they invest. They focus on leverage. How can 1 hour create 10 hours of return? One decision create a ripple effect of impact. That way of thinking doesn't come from motivation, it comes from the frame. The good news is that frames can be reshaped. The brain is plastic. You can install new default perspectives, just like you'd update the operating system on your phone. But just like any software upgrade, it requires intention and repetition. Start by auditing your current mental frames. Do you approach problems with curiosity or avoidance? Do you assume control over outcomes or wait for permission? Do you view effort as valuable or exhausting? Your answers will reveal what's driving your decision-making. Once you identify the unhelpful frames, you don't fight them, you rewire them. Neuroscience tells us the more a thought pattern is repeated, especially when paired with emotion, the stronger the neural connection becomes. So when you face a setback, pause and choose a new frame. This isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. When you're uncertain, replace "I don't know what to do" with "I can figure it out." These aren't affirmations for the sake of ego. They're mental reps for the brain. Over time, this process builds what's called cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift frames quickly and effectively. Millionaires have mastered this. When others freeze in uncertainty, they adapt. When others complain about market changes, they pivot. This isn't because they're fearless. It's because their frame is built around response, not reaction. Growth, not protection. Possibility, not paralysis. Ultimately, millionaire thinking isn't about obsessing over money. It's about using the power of your brain to create options, to generate solutions, to expand what's possible. And that begins with how you frame your life, your challenges, and your identity. Change your frame, and you change your future. Everything else flows from there. Most people misunderstand dopamine. They think it's just the chemical of pleasure, the thing that spikes when you win, succeed, or get what you want. But dopamine is far more than that. It's the molecule of motivation, drive, and pursuit. It doesn't merely reward you at the end of the road. It pushes you to walk the path in the first place. The key difference between average thinkers and high performers is this. High performers use dopamine as a tool. Most people fall into the trap of letting it control. When you treat dopamine like a tool, you train your brain to release it during the process, not just at the end. You condition yourself to feel satisfaction from showing up, putting in effort, and staying consistent. That rewires the brain in profound ways. It shifts your relationship with work, with progress, and with failure. Instead of chasing quick hits of pleasure, you begin to generate sustainable motivation that doesn't fade when the outcome is delayed or uncertain. The dopamine trap is subtle, but destructive. It's what keeps people glued to social media, addicted to scrolling, needing constant validation or entertainment. Every notification, or novelty moment gives a spike of dopamine, but it's fleeting, and the brain quickly builds tolerance. What follows is the need for more stimulation just to feel normal. Over time, this depletes your ability to focus, persevere, or enjoy long-term projects. Your motivational circuitry gets hijacked. And once that happens, hard work feels dull, discipline feels unbearable, and boredom feels like suffering. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can recondition your dopamine system to serve you. The first step is understanding how it works. Dopamine doesn't only respond to reward, it spikes in anticipation of it. If you learn to associate dopamine with the pursuit, not the prize, you unlock a kind of motivation that doesn't burn out. You stop being dependent on external wins and start deriving energy from internal progress. This is how high performers stay consistent even when there's no applause. They've linked effort to reward in their mind. They've taught their brains, when I push, I win, even before the finish line. Whether it's writing one page of a book, closing a small deal, doing one more workout rep, or simply showing up when it's hard, they celebrate the act itself. And that reinforces the behavior neurologically. One of the most powerful tools for this is what's called self-generated reward. This means learning to consciously acknowledge and appreciate your effort, especially when no one else sees it. When you internally say, that was hard, but I did it, you create a small dopamine release. That signal tells your brain, repeat this. Do it often enough and your system begins to crave hard things. Not because they're glamorous, but because they make you feel alive. This doesn't mean you avoid pleasure. It means you become intentional about how and when you allow dopamine to spike. One way to train this is by delaying gratification. Instead of rewarding yourself instantly after completing a task, pause. Sit in the moment of effort. Reflect on what you overcame. Give your brain space to associate reward with the grind, not just the outcome. Over time, you'll find your desire shifting. Distraction will feel less appealing. Deep focus will feel more satisfying. Another trap to avoid is over-rewarding yourself for small wins in unhealthy ways. If every time you work, you need coffee, sugar, or stimulation to get through it, you're outsourcing your dopamine system. Instead, learn to generate it from within. Practices like visualization, breathwork, and journaling progress can all support this. They activate the same motivational circuits, but in a way that builds mental endurance. Also crucial is managing your baseline dopamine. When you constantly overstimulate your system, whether through substances, tech, or thrill-seeking, you lower your resting levels. That means everyday tasks feel dull and discipline feels painful. To reset, it's important to create space for boredom. Take walks without your phone. Sit in silence. Do deep work without background noise. These actions may feel uncomfortable at first, but they allow your dopamine system to stabilize. And once it does, natural sources of motivation return with greater force. The ultimate goal is balance, a dopamine system that's responsive, not reactive. One that lights up when you're aligned with purpose, not just pleasure. When used correctly, dopamine becomes your ally. It nudges you forward, keeps you curious, and rewards you not only when you win, but when you grow. This is what drives long-term success. Not hype, not hustle, but the quiet confidence that comes from mastering your own chemistry. The most powerful shift you can make is from being a dopamine consumer to a dopamine creator. You stop waiting for excitement to come from the outside. You stop chasing the next hit. Instead, you build a life that naturally generates meaning through progress, purpose, and process. That's how you use dopamine as a tool. That's how you train your mind to chase long-term greatness instead of short-term pleasure. That's how you build a brain that's built to win. Most people believe that time management is the ultimate key to productivity and success. They plan their calendars, meticulously use productivity apps, set timers, and track their hours. But the truth is, managing your time means nothing if you can't control your focus. The most valuable resource you have isn't hours, it's attention. Where your attention goes, your life goes. Time is neutral, focus is direction. Two people can have the same 8 hours, but the one who disciplines their focus will always outperform the one who merely organizes their schedule. Focus is the ability to direct cognitive energy toward a specific task or idea without distraction. It's not just about avoiding interruptions from your phone or your environment. It's about learning how to command your internal state. It's about controlling what your mind dwells on, how long it stays there, and how deeply it engages. Focus is both a mental skill and a neurological process. It depends heavily on the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, planning, and sustained attention. Discipline of focus starts with clarity. When your goals are vague, your brain doesn't know what to filter for. It becomes easy to drift, checking emails, bouncing between tabs, multitasking. But when your intentions are precise, your mind shifts into a mode called goal-directed behavior. This activates neural circuits that prioritize relevant information, suppress irrelevant stimuli, and sustain effort over time. That's why having a to-do list isn't enough. You must know why each task matters. You must create meaning behind the work. Because focus follows value, what your brain believes is important, it will give energy to. One of the greatest challenges to disciplined focus today is the constant bombardment of dopamine-driven distractions. Social media, notifications, streaming content, breaking news, they're all designed to hijack your attention. Each one offers a tiny spike of novelty, a brief hit of dopamine that makes your brain feel rewarded. But the cost is enormous. These small hits fragment your attention. They erode your capacity for deep work. And over time, they train your brain to seek stimulation instead of progress. To discipline your focus, you must first protect it. That means creating environments that reduce cognitive noise, turn off unnecessary notifications. We set specific blocks of time where you do focused work without interruptions. Use physical spaces intentionally, designate areas for deep work, and remove access to distraction during those periods. These actions might seem small, but they signal to your brain this is a space for high value. Thinking. Another powerful tool is working in time-structured focus blocks. Research shows that the brain can maintain peak focus for about 90 minutes before needing rest. By working in 60-90-minute intervals followed by short breaks, you align with your brain's natural rhythms. These breaks aren't for mindless scrolling. They're for resetting. Take a short walk, hydrate, breathe deeply. This prevents mental fatigue and helps you return to the next session with renewed clarity. What you focus on is important, but how you focus is equally critical. True focus is not rigid. It's dynamic. It requires cognitive flexibility, the ability to zoom in on details while staying connected to the bigger picture. It's being able to block out noise, but also pivot when necessary. This level of control doesn't happen by accident. It's trained through repetition and awareness. One of the best ways to strengthen focus is by doing a single task with full presence, even if it's simple. Reading one page, writing one paragraph, solving one problem. When you do this daily, you reinforce the brain's capacity for sustained attention. Multitasking is the enemy of disciplined focus. People often brag about being able to juggle multiple things at once, but the brain doesn't actually multitask. It rapidly switches between tasks, and each switch comes with a cognitive cost. Focused attention leads to flow, a mental state where performance is high and time feels suspended. Task switching kills that. It's like trying to sprint while constantly changing direction. You burn energy and lose momentum. Internal distractions are just as potent as external ones. Thoughts, worries, or emotional triggers can hijack your focus from the inside. This is where mindfulness becomes essential. Practicing present moment awareness, even for 5 minutes a day, can dramatically improve your ability to catch yourself when your mind wanders and redirect it. You're not just trying to force focus, you're training awareness so that focus becomes easier to return to. This is cognitive discipline at the deepest level. Also, not all focus is created equal. High-level performers don't just discipline their focus during work, they apply it to everything. Conversations, listening, recovery, rest. They bring intention to whatever they're doing, which sharpens the mind like a blade. The way you do one thing often reflects how you do everything. If you have focus during rest, you never truly recover. If you multitask during learning, you never truly understand. Discipline is holistic, not situational. And perhaps most importantly, focus must be tied to purpose. If you're trying to focus just for productivity's sake, your motivation will eventually weaken. But when your focus is aligned with a deeper mission, whether that's building something meaningful, helping others, or mastering your craft, it becomes self-sustaining. The brain thrives on meaningful goals. That feeling tired after effort is a sign of expansion, not limitation. This shift transforms how you relate to adversity. It builds mental toughness at the root level of identity. There's also a third element that amplifies this process: presence. Presence. When you bring conscious attention to what you're repeating and why, the learning is faster. Neuroscience shows that focused attention during repetition enhances synaptic change. That means the more aware you are while doing the work, the stronger the result. Mindless repetition yields less return, but deliberate, emotionally engaged practice, especially when reinforced with reward, becomes transformational. Small wins matter immensely in this process. Don't wait for massive breakthroughs to reward yourself. Every time you follow through on a micro action, like resisting a distraction, pushing through fatigue, or shifting a thought, pause and acknowledge it. That moment of internal recognition is the signal your brain needs to encode the behavior. Celebrate the process, not just the outcome. Because outcomes take time, but the process is always within reach. The beauty of repetition and reward is that they eventually generate momentum. Once a new neural pathway is strong enough, it begins to fire without effort. What took discipline becomes default. That's when confidence builds, not from external validation, but from the internal experience of change. You begin to trust yourself because you've seen yourself evolve. Rewiring your brain is not about forcing transformation. It's about building it brick by brick through consistent practice and intelligent reinforcement. You are not at the mercy of your thoughts or habits. You're the architect. You have the tools, and every day, every repetition, every reward is a vote for the future you're creating. Use them well. Most people jump straight into strategy when they want to solve a problem, build a business, improve performance, or create change. They start tweaking systems, searching for the right tools, copying routines, and consuming endless amounts of information. Strategy feels tangible. It feels like action. But without the right internal state, even the best strategy falls flat. The truth is, your mental and physiological state is the foundation upon which strategy either thrives or fails. If your internal state is off, if your mind is scattered, your body stressed, or your emotions reactive, no plan will work as intended. That's why the smartest thing you can do before managing any strategy is to manage your state. Your state is the total sum of your thoughts, emotions, and nervous system activity in a given moment. It's not static, it's fluid and responsive to your environment, your self-talk, your breath, your posture, your focus. And it directly impacts how you think, feel, act. When you're in a state of clarity, calm, and alertness, you process information better. You listen more deeply. You take smarter risks. You remain composed under pressure. In contrast, when you're overwhelmed, anxious, fatigued, or emotionally charged, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and reasoning, starts to shut down. You default to survival patterns, make reactive decisions, and underperform, even if your strategy is solid. That's why high performers, leaders, and thinkers across disciplines prioritize managing their state before execution. They understand that the first battle is internal. If they can enter the right state, they access more of their capabilities. If they ignore it, they unconsciously sabotage their outcomes. Managing your state doesn't mean you suppress your emotions or pretend to be calm. It means you build awareness of your internal condition and learn how to shift it intentionally. The breath is one of the fastest tools to shift state. Shallow, rapid breathing activates the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, creating tension, restlessness, and tunnel vision. Deep, slow nasal breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest state, promoting calm, clarity, and emotional regulation. Before you take a call, walk into a meeting, or start your work session, spend 2 minutes on intentional breathing. Inhale slowly through your nose, hold and exhale twice as long. That alone can shift your physiology, reduce cortisol, and reset your focus. Another powerful lever is attention. Where you place your focus determines your state. If your mind is scattered across tasks, worries, or future hypotheticals, you dilute your energy. But if you train your mind to stay in the present, on what matters right now, you regain control. This isn't just mental, it's neurological. Focus engages your executive function and suppresses the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for wandering thoughts. That's why practices like mindfulness and visualization are so effective. They discipline your focus. They anchor you in intention rather than reactivity. Posture also shapes state. Slouched shoulders, downward gaze, and shallow breathing send signals of defeat and passivity to the brain. Upright posture, open chest, and eye-level gaze cue confidence and engagement. Your body and brain are in constant feedback. Change one, and the other follows. That's why athletes, performers, and leaders have rituals that involve movement, stretching, or even power poses before important events. They're not being dramatic. They're tuning their biology to match the demands of performance. Internal dialogue is another critical factor. Your thoughts aren't just commentary. They're commands to your nervous system. If you repeatedly tell yourself, "This is hard, I can't handle this," or "I'm not ready," your brain prepares for failure. But if you say, "This is a challenge, and I've trained for this," or "one step at a time," you create a state of agency. This is not toxic positivity. It's about choosing useful language that keeps your system regulated and resourceful. Your words are tools. Use them to stabilize your internal world before facing the external one. Sleep, nutrition, and recovery also affect your baseline state more than any tool or tactic. If your body is undernourished, dehydrated, or sleep deprived, your emotional threshold shrinks. You become more reactive, less focused, and less creative, no matter how smart your plan is. That's why mastering state is about lifestyle, not just hacks. You need systems of recovery and renewal built into your day. Walks, sunlight, movement, hydration, silence, these are not luxuries. They are non-negotiables if you want your brain and body to perform at their highest level. This mindset shift, prioritizing state before strategy, builds resilience over time. It makes you less dependent on perfect conditions. You stop waiting to feel ready or have the perfect plan. Instead, you train yourself to generate the right state regardless of the situation. That's power. That's leadership. And from that place, strategy becomes clearer. Execution becomes smoother. You stop chasing more tactics and start making the ones you have actually work. When you operate from the wrong state, you question yourself, second-guess decisions, and overcompensate with complexity. But when you manage your state first, you simplify. You cut through the noise. You trust your instincts and allow your intelligence to guide action. Managing state isn't about being in a constant peak performance mode. It's about being in the right mode for the right moment. Calm when you need to think. Charged when you need to act. Neutral when you need to act. Neutral when you need to observe. In the end, strategy is external architecture. State is the internal engine. You can't build anything meaningful if the engine is misfiring. So before you plan, pause. Before you execute, breathe. Before you analyze, ground yourself. Master your state and your strategy will finally have a place to land. Visualization is powerful. It engages the brain's predictive circuits, primes your nervous system, and helps you mentally rehearse success before it ever happens. When done right, it sharpens focus, increases motivation, and builds a mental map toward your goals. But visualization alone is not enough. In fact, it can become a trap if it's not paired with action. The brain doesn't know the difference between vividly imagining progress and actually making it. That's why people often feel like they're improving just because they're thinking about improve. They see the finish line in their minds, get a temporary dopamine hit, and then return to their old routines. Real change comes when visualization is followed immediately by micro actions, small, consistent behaviors that compound over time. The power of micro actions lies in their scale and frequency. They bypass the brain's resistance to big changes. When you aim too high too fast, your nervous system perceives threat. It triggers hesitation, procrastination, and mental fatigue. But when you break the big goal into a manageable step, you reduce friction. You activate momentum, not overwhelm. The key is to make the next action so small that it feels undeniable. If you want to write a book, write one sentence. If you want to get fit, stretch for 2 minutes. If you want to build confidence, make one difficult phone call. You don't need to overhaul your life in a day. You just need to prove to your brain that you are moving. This is where visualization becomes fuel, not fantasy. Use it to build clarity around the identity you are becoming, then immediately confirm that vision with action. The brain's reward system, particularly the release of dopamine, is activated not just when you achieve a goal, but when you recognize progress. That means microactions give you more frequent doses of motivation. You're not just chasing the end result, you're reinforcing the behavior loop. Intention, right arrow action. Right arrow reward, right arrow repeat. Repetition of small actions builds evidence, and evidence builds belief. Many people don't lack vision. They lack proof. They've imagined success, but haven't taken enough consistent actions to convince their nervous system it's real. That's why small wins are so important. They tell the brain this is working. Over time, these wins reshape identity. You're no longer just someone who wants to improve. You become someone who does improve. And identity-based change sticks deeper than goal-based change. The real challenge is consistency. The brain thrives on patterns. When an action becomes a pattern, the brain automates it. This is how habits are formed, but automation only happens through repetition. So the smartest move is to make the first action as easy as possible, and then do it often. Forget motivation. Rely on systems. You won't feel like it every day, but that's irrelevant. Your training behavior, not emotion, show up on good days and bad. The discipline of doing will reshape how you think and feel. Microactions also rewire the brain through neuroplasticity. Every time you engage in a behavior, you strengthen the neural connections responsible for it. The more often you repeat a behavior, the stronger the circuit becomes and the easier it gets to perform. This is why action must lead. Waiting for the right mindset or the perfect plan is often a disguised form of avoidance. Clarity and confidence grow from experience, not contemplation. It's also important to track your microactions. The brain is highly responsive to feedback. Even a simple journal, checklist, or daily log can reinforce behavior. When you see the streak build, when you see the proof stack, it becomes harder to quit. You start to believe in your own effort. This builds trust with yourself, and self-trust is the cornerstone of lasting change. When you trust yourself to follow through, larger goals no longer feel intimidating. They feel inevitable. And this approach doesn't mean you should abandon big dreams. Dream boldly. Visualize vividly, but don't let the vision sit in your head without grounding it in behavior. Your brain thrives on alignment between thought and action. When your behavior matches your intention, you experience coherence. Coherence creates momentum, and momentum builds the kind of internal drive that can't be faked or borrowed. Also, don't mistake simplicity for weakness. There is power in the micro. One extra push-up, one extra call, one extra page. These tiny acts are the bricks that build resilience. And because they're small, you can recover from failure quickly. Miss a day? Start again tomorrow. The micro makes change sustainable because it's flexible and adaptable. Life will always get messy, but when your plan is built on micro actions, you're never too far off track. Over time, the compounding effect kicks in. What felt small at first becomes second nature. Your brain, your body, your habits, they adapt. You get stronger, sharper, more confident. And when that happens, you start to expand your capacity. Micro becomes macro. You can handle more, do more, expect more, not because you forced it, but because you built the foundation for it. So visualize, yes, but more importantly, act. Every dream you see in your mind must be backed by behavior in the real world. Don't wait for big moments. Build small rituals. Stack tiny wins. Master the art of momentum, because those little actions, they're not little at all. They are everything. The real transformation doesn't happen in sudden breakthroughs or grand strategies. It happens in the daily, often invisible choices you make to train your mind. Millionaire thinking isn't a result of luck or magic. It's the byproduct of mental framing, disciplined focus, deliberate repetition, emotional regulation, and relentless microactions. When you manage your state before your strategy, when you understand how to use dopamine as a tool, and when you choose action over passive dreaming, you start to operate from a place of control rather than chaos. Your brain begins to work for you, not against you. Success becomes a system, not a mystery. If you want to think and perform like a millionaire, it begins not with money, but with mindset, not with the outcome, but with the input. Every breath, every repetition, every decision to act, despite discomfort, is a signal to your nervous system. This is who I am becoming. And that's the ultimate power. Not just changing what you do, but reshaping who you are. Start where you are. Focus your energy. Build momentum. Because the future you want isn't waiting at the end of a perfect plan. It's being built right now in your mind.